Can we hear me now? I think you can hear me now. I think you can hear me now. And
Yes,
you,
yes.
good, 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 good. Well, welcome to the next edition of the Comeback Conversations with Dr. Clarke. And as we won't belabor long, because time is money and money is time. It is a pleasure to have you back for this next edition, and we're going to jump right into it. So let me acknowledge Sister Warner Moore. How's everything with you?
I am great. How are you doing? And also, Prophet Dr. Cheryl Clarke.
Well, we're doing excellent. We're doing wonderful. We're doing vivacious and it's wonderful. So I won't speak for her. So let me, without further ado, just jump straight to Dr. Cheryl Clarke.
I am well, Dr.
In darkness,
Clarke,
in the
and thank you so
darkness.
much for asking. I'm well. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure because I know my mic was acting funny.
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you, but you're in the darkness. You look a little dark.
Oh, okay, I'll turn it on. I'll turn off the light.
No darkness, just darkness.
Yes, I'm upstairs. Okay, I'll turn the light on.
Okay. And so we're gonna jump right into it because we can and other people that will eventually come in, they can jump into the conversation. But this I definitely want us just to open up with because it's leading the conversation, and I just want to get our take on it because we should have our own respective take on certain things. And so, as you can see, I have two images up of two individuals who you know, have transitioned within the past week, and both of them was during between our last taping and now this taping. The gentleman on the left may not be getting as much notoriety as the individual on the right, but he is also a young man named I don't want to jack up his name, so I'll just call him Trey Reed. He is a student at Delta State University in the state of Mississippi. And we welcome in Tanya Cooper, who has just joined us. And he was found hanged on the campus in the middle of the square. And at this particular moment, you're hearing little bits and pieces of it on the media cycle, but it's just very interesting that this young man was found on the those particular spaces and places. And one of the things that we've recognized and noticed is that, sometimes when it comes to individuals from our community, we don't get as much play or much discussion on that. So right now, they have some of the individuals that play. Good evening, good evening, good evening. And they have some of the individuals that play that's starting to push for a more definitive investigation because now, according to what's starting to slowly come out, it seems as if he was found with some bruising, whereas initially the authorities there attempted to say that there was no bruising and they were attempting to call it a suicide, where he would literally hang himself on a tree in the courtyard in a state university there in Mississippi. And also the gentleman on the right who's had individuals from the president of the United States to his earthly remains being flown on Air Force Two, to, as we have in certain conversations and dispensations, about his rhetoric and what he shared, especially when it came to people of African American descent. And his name is Charlie Kirk. And one has been inundating the news cycles over the past maybe 4 or 5 days, and one has been hardly anything talked about in mainstream media. And so you can do your own recognizance and research, but it's just amazing that I believe the gentleman on the right is getting a little bit much more play because of his efforts galvanizing those evangelicals and those individuals of his respective community to vote for the current president of the United States, which has generated a space where they're about to have like almost like a state funeral this weekend. And I believe he's from Arizona, even though he was shot in Utah. And on top of that, instead of they just saying that he was shot, they're calling it an assassination, which they more or less are creating a narrative to put it at the level like a Dr. Martin Luther King or a Malcolm X or Anwar Sadat or any of these individuals that were burgeoning world leaders who were creating movements that were attempting to bring people together, whereas the person on the right was very much a separatist and moving into spaces of Project 2025 and Project Esther and things of that nature. So I'd just love to open up the floor to see what any of the members of the circle have to say about any of these things and your input on these thoughts.
This is Juana Mooring. The gentleman on the left-hand side, what is his name again?
Trey Reed. His nickname was Trey. His first name starts with like a D. He Demetrius or what. But they affectionately called him Trey.
Thank you, Trey Reed. No, this is the first that I've heard of the story. I did not know. And thank you for informing us of this, sharing that.
Well, not to cut you off, but as always, Miss Nicole Johnson, our fleeting reporter here, gets us the right information. DeMar Travion, that was his first name, DeMar Travion, but they called him Trey.
Thank you so much. Thank you also, Nicole Johnson. Amen. But with this, life is so precious, and the media, if it's the higher ups, however, people want to word it, things are not fair and balanced. Information should be shared, just as it is regarding Charlie Kirk. This information should be out there. But for some reason, it's hidden. And I can imagine why, but that's not right. But also, with that being said, as far as Charlie Kirk, what happened to him was awful.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to, none of us want to see that happen to anybody. But until this incident, I remember seeing his face, but I did not know of Charlie Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
When I started doing my research and started listening to the things that he was saying, it is not things that I personally would support or say regarding anyone. But with that being said, it just goes back to God, meaning the Lord teaches us how to love. God is love.
Mm-hmm.
And why, if there's one side or one part of a group that wants to focus in on one aspect, but if you're gonna tell the story, if you're gonna tell about what's actually going on, you tell all sides, because at the end of the day, we all bleed, and all of us are made from God. I'm complete.
Thank you for that, Miss Morin. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Anyone else in the circle would like to chime in about this subject matter? What, just your thoughts. Because, we've been inundated on one end and not really informed on the other.
Just Nicole, jump in for a second.
No problem.
I just learned about or read about Troy today in relation to a Caucasian man who was found hanging from a tree.
Mm-hmm.
For Troy, they're saying, oh, no foul play. He committed suicide. I'm not quite sure how you would accomplish that, but okay. And in reference to Mr. Kirk, how do you pour gasoline on a house, light a match, stay in the house, and be upset that you caught on fire. There is life and death and the power of the tongue.
Come on, Proverbs.
He spoke his unfortunate demise. In this season of Pluto and Aquarius, transformation is coming, and I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And how it would behoove me to go to my partner in life to see what her thoughts on it, because when she was the one that brought it to my attention. Initially, I was thinking that they were putting flags at half staff for like 9/11, things of that nature. And come to find out when, the president of the United States talking about he's delegating, to make sure all the flags in our federal agencies should be at half staff for Charlie Kirk. And I said, wait. You act like this man was a senator or the vice president of the United States or some level of dignitary that deserved this. This was a private citizen who spewed out hate. But we're putting the flags at half staff. And when Dr. Cheryl made me aware of that, I had to pause for a second. I said, wait a minute. I said, oh yeah, and Trump announced that he would get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And you're sitting there like, huh? And are we in a Twilight Zone? I know my wife loves the Twilight Zone. But are we really in a Twilight Zone? Is this the new 2025 version of the Twilight Zone? This doesn't make any sense. So Dr. Cheryl Clarke, what's your thoughts?
You know my thoughts, and I guess I'll share them here. There's a lot of different emotions that come up with Charlie. But there's also a lot of different emotions that come up with this young man that was seeming to, I don't know how you can hang yourself from a tree and stuff like that. But I just think that this administration has gotten very much so the people that were saying things at their dinner table, and then they're coming out of their dinner table and now saying them out loud. That's it. So as our culture, for him to, and I noticed what was happening, but I just noticed that if we do not take a stand for something, we'll fall for anything. And these people took a stand for something. And what we need to know is that racism has not ended. Racism is here, and racism will be here to stay. So what stand are you going to take? He has a whole, meaning Charlie, he has a whole movement. And so does Donald Trump. So does Barack Obama. Like, so didn't Martin Luther King. We all have movements. And we're going to have people that's going to follow those movements. Unfortunately, some people, it's our people that's targeted. And we got to figure out in our backyard what we're going to do. I was just talking to my husband. I said, I know my platform, but what's somebody else's platform for the elderly? What about somebody else's platform for women that for healthcare? You know what type of healthcare disparities are out there still? Discrimination. Women are still dying. Women of color are still dying and not getting the medical need because they feel that we're strong and we don't need then we don't need that medication. No, we're human. So this is really disturbing. Yeah. So I pray for his family, meaning I pray for both of their families. They lost a person was lost here. A life was lost. And the survivors are the ones that have to now deal with the loss of this. So that's my take, and I'm complete.
Thank you for that. And desire to get Miss Cooper's voice in the matter. She's probably heard stuff from down there in the 215 in regards to any of this. Just want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to have their voice in the matter.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Clarks, for sharing this space. I want to add to what Dr. Cheryl Clark said is that um, Kirk wife is actually carrying on the torch of his platform. So that was just very powerful what she just said that whatever rhetoric and whatever you believe, she's carrying it on. And it's interesting because I was watching on YouTube that they want to bury Kirk in what's called I think it's Valhalla, and you have to be in combat to actually be buried there. So there's a whole narrative that's being painted around him being a civil rights leader and comparing him to Dr. King. And, I did hear about his name Troy. I did hear about Troy, and I have mixed feelings about both of them, but nevertheless, as you all were saying, that they're both human beings. We have to see them as human beings. They both came from God to Miss Mooring's point. But a lot of mixed feelings come up for me too in this space. And I'm complete. I'm just learning to be with it and pray with everybody. And on another note, my son is out there in Utah.
Mm.
Yeah, he moved out there a couple of years ago. And, when I share that story, they're like, why did he move out there? Like that's, one of the whitest places on earth, but that's where he was moved to go. And I've recently talked to him and, he's okay. Because my heart did kind of sink like, oh my gosh, are they going to be like raiding the streets looking for, the first Black person? But he happened to rupture his Achilles tendon playing football. So he's in the house anyway. And I'm complete. I just wanted to add that sidebar.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for that. Thank you for that update. And as we now come back into this space, we start to recognize how impactful and powerful we are. And the lives that are in our community are ones that we should always respect, always honor, always recognize. And as Ms. Mooring alluded to, the power that we have is to recognize that any atrocity that happens against us needs to be remembered, needs to be, not swept under the rug, not just understood or just say, those people can handle it, as Dr. Cheryl was alluding to. Because, the disparities when it comes to healthcare or health treatment, because I don't know if what we really have is health care in the United States. We're treating ailments and not creating the atmosphere where we can move towards having care. And I believe that care also moves in that respective space towards how we interact or how we deal with each other as respective communities. So, I hope they get to the bottom of, what happened to Mr. Reed. They've already charged the gentleman who happened to be a MAGA supporter with which I call the killing of Charlie Kirk. I don't think I can put my mouth to say an assassination. That's just sometimes a narrative to attempt to make something more heightened than what it was. He was shot. And, as Brother Malcolm said many, many years ago when we lost the President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he says, sometimes the chickens come home to roost. And we at times may not necessarily like it. I'm welcoming Mr. Richards. We may not necessarily like it, but we have to honor it. Sometimes we have to understand what we send out can come back very vehemently, either in the same fashion or even much more mandated. And based upon Mr. Kirk's own words, where a couple of days prior, he said that he felt that, he had a dream in one of his podcast videos, which is online, that he, made a statement, he had a dream about an AR-15, and lo and behold, the person who decided to take his life was one of the fellow people from his own community who happened to be a supporter of the same individual who's now in the White House. So it just makes you wonder. Just makes you wonder. Just those, as Arsenio used to say, as we talk about comeback, those things that make you go, But like as we're seeing all this stuff about the Medal of Freedom and being flown on Air Force Two and the vice president going on the person's platform and now, spewing some of the same rhetoric, you're the vice president of the United States. Is this where we're moving towards? And we have to be mindful and we have to stay woke as a community to recognize, this is how dictatorships are started. When you hear civil liberties are being infringed upon, or the federal government is deciding which cities they're going to send National Guard troops in. So let's, pray for the people of Memphis, because it seems like that's the next focus of theirs other than Chicago, and they attempted to do in Los Angeles, which didn't work. And right now they still have National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. So we just have to be mindful. We should just be aware all the different moving parts, not to move in fear, not to create rhetoric. Oh my God, the sky is falling. But, to be a wise individual means that you're gazing and understanding and viewing what is happening. And when we can do that, then we're well positioned as a community. And so with that being said, we're going to jump right into the main teaching for today. And we're going to still be in the space, still dealing with ontology on its many levels and forms. And let's see, anything else? I see 3 new thoughts. Okay, man. Let's get this conversation started. And if you missed last week, you can definitely go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Gregory Clarke, Master Coach. And you can catch some of the conversations from last week, which are uploaded now. And encourage you to become a subscriber if you haven't done so. So, the sacred art of space holding, creating communities where souls come alive, by myself, Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. This presentation explores the power of deep listening, community building, and personal growth. It emphasizes creating spaces for transformation, authentic enrollment, and the co-creation of culture. The deck encourages viewing crises as opportunity for growth and highlights the creation of resilient communities through genuine connections. And as you can see, we're made sure instead of just, being a well-rounded space. And that's what it's all about. And it's amazing how many things that we have influenced, not only in the United States, but globally. When you see other communities attempt to dress like us or listen to our forms of music that we created or position themselves to say that they're in those respective spaces, it starts to make you wonder how powerful our ability to influence is. And we have to start to take a more definitive perspective in response to those areas. So it's the sacred art of space holding, which we as those of African descent have been doing very, very powerfully. Listening is the language of love. Builds on what we shared last week, because in the sacred art of deep listening, we discover that love speaks through presence, not words. When we truly listen, we create a holy space where transformation becomes possible. This is where healing begins, not in our responses, but in our reverent attention to what emerges in the space between souls. And it's something I know I've learned from Dr. Cheryl Clarke in regards to, being more interactive. Because you can be in a space and not interactive. You can be in a space and your body is there, but you're not there. You can be caught up in whatever it is that you're dealing with, but your physical form is there, but your mind is someplace else. And at times, you should allow yourself the benefit of being in the space just to listen. Sometimes people just desire to be listened to. Even if you may not have a relevant response to it, but sometimes people just desire to be listened to. And that comes into creating a sacred space creation. Listening creates the container where transformation naturally unfolds. When we hold space with reverence, we invite the sacred into our conversations. And as we recognize those areas, you do would desire not just to be moving in the space where it's just you and the other person or you and other people, but to allow, the sacred or the divine or the